To close this part of the Viking Portable World Library, that is, the Christian and the Jew within the Christian and the Jew section. Is that supposed to be the Christian? Is that supposed to be the Jew? I don't think There are logical questions to be asked, pertinent to contemporary social problems, and the view of history of New Testament writing. Every generation changed it, until Constantine, and there were still, this doesn't say Christ enough, so they changed it by the end of that 4th century of the Vulgar Era. And they, the Jerome Bible had a little bit of changes that were more than just, translation. And to this day, verses and words are being added and subtracted that didn't exist in the 1800s. And the Jehovah's Witnesses said, it's got to at least be in Greek somewhere, pre-Constantine Greek, to be part of our Bible, or at least pre-Orthodox and Catholic split. I don't remember exactly how their doctrine is phrased, but that makes some sense, There are logical questions to be asked. Would the Gospels, and thus the story of the life of Christ, ever have been written at all and preserved for us had it not been for the passionate ministry of Paul and his colleagues? Well, Paul kind of grafted 4 characters into one. You got Asa, the prophet and Messiah, with a small following. A poor guy worked with his hands. Some of the scenes considered him the teacher of wickedness because he was putting everything out in the open and making it for everybody instead of this elitist. You got Judah Barabbas ben Judah, who wrote the thing the Book of Revelations was based upon in the time where Jesus was said to have been around, and got his village killed off. And people say, well, this must have been what happened in his childhood if they're looking for a historical Jesus in the biblical period. You got Barnabas, who was likely would have been killed in the place of Jesus. And you have another character, Apollonius Christ. Literally, Apollonius Christ, who would have been a contemporary of Paul. How much of the point of view in the Gospels, the Acts of the Apostles, and the Epistles, how much of the point of view of the Christian church today, how much of the separation between Jew and Gentile, I don't know, heathen, pagan, Gentile, don't use these terms, as they're a different group. I don't like that. Rise directly from Paul's point of view rather than from the doctrines of Christ himself. These questions have been asked many times, and no attempt to answer them will be made here. They are raised simply because they are healthy questions for the mind of anyone approaching the subject of Christ's place in religious history of the Western world, or the subject of a world emerging from the most destructive war in history and hoping for a society based upon the brotherhood of man. They are raised because they emphasize once more the indisputable fact that Jesus, regardless of the question of his special divinity, which Christians assert, and Jews, of course, deny, was one in a long line of great Jewish spiritual leaders who together gave the world the religious and ethical foundations of a Western civilization, which are threatened today by a vast complex of international antagonisms. The Christian cannot, if he wishes to understand his own beliefs, separate Christ from his predecessors, nor can the Jew, if he wishes to understand the full flowering of the religious thought of his Old Testament prophets, Tanakh, Torah, Nabiim, Ketubim, law, prophets, writing, It's not to be considered as the Old Testament. But there's, you know, it wasn't an international revelation, so in a sense, it was the Old Testament. Old Testament, New Testament, Final Testament, you know, that sort of idea makes sense. Ignore its logical development in the doctrine of Jesus Christ. That there should ever have been any separation between the doctrines of Israel and those of Christianity is a sad commentary on the Jews' lack of understanding of Isaiah, Ezekiel, Hillel, and other great leaders, and the Christians' lack of understanding of the Jew whom he calls Savior. Isaiah had a different idea of Zionism, for example. It wasn't blood and soil. It was about setting a good example. That's literally what you have, pretty much. Oh, yeah, tribes of Israel can be Zion. But they have to become that. They don't, you know. It's not just show up to the land and, yeah, we're the chosen people now. The sacred books of the Jew and the Christian are contained in what the Western world calls the Holy Bible, of which the Old Testament only is acknowledged by the Orthodox Jew, while the Christian Church has added to it the New Testament, containing the Gospels, the Pauline writings, and certain other books. During the early years of the Christian Church, there was a movement by the Christians to abolish the Old Testament entirely and accept only the New as the Christian Bible. Fortunately, it failed, else Christianity would have been robbed of far the greater part of its scriptures, including the scriptural basis on which Christ built his doctrine. Yeah, the so-called Old Testament is the better part. The Old Testament of Judaism contains 39 books, arranged in 3 groups, known as the Law, the first 5 books, called the Torah by the Jews, and the Pentateuch by the Christians, the prophets and the writings. These books are still read in the original Hebrew, with the exception of about half the book of Daniel, parts of Ezra, and 1 verse of Jeremiah, which are in Aramaic. And it's all technically Aramaic, but there's different Aramaics. Because, yeah, the religion, the language of the people being called the Hebrews, which were a minority. It's just a small, almost influential group at that point, you know. In all Orthodox Jewish synagogues. In the Christian Bible, they have been rearranged into 39 books. The so-called New Testament consists of 27 books, which were originally written in Greek during the 1st century of the Christian era. There are also other books which are considered apocryphal by many, but those of the Old Testament Apocrypha are still included in the Bibles of the Greek and Roman Catholic Church, which also take some of their traditions from the New Testament Apocrypha. Though they do not include the books of this group in their Bible, none of these apocryphal books are included in this volume. For extensive selections from both the New and Old Testament Apocrypha, see the Bible of the World. Here, sections from the Old Testament and the New are given in one group, as by far the largest part of the Western world knows them. And, you know, the whole thing goes a little further into that. But the Apocrypha was removed by certain Protestant groups, even though the King James Version of the Bible apparently had it at some point. And some Bibles had as many as 100 different parts instead of the 66.